All right, you guys, we have got Thursday night football tonight, and I could not be more excited. Before we get there, though, I wanted to toss a couple more videos your way to help you make some of those final lineup decisions and get you guys equipped with some more information to make some of these tough choices. Because tonight's game, the Rams and the Bills, takes place with two very fantasy relevant teams with a lot of lineup worthy players in action. So I wanted to be able to talk through some of those names and briefly cover some team situations heading into these matchups so you can get my final thoughts on situations for week one. So in this video, I'll be covering my top 30 running back rankings and tiers lists. Again, we're just briefly going to be talking through each name, walking through our tiers, and then ultimately deciding who falls where for today's episode. So if you're new around here, make sure to drop down, smash that like button, click the subscribe button, and turn the bell on so you're never late for an episode I've posted. I believe these are my 7th and 8th long style content pieces for week one fantasy action, and we'll be doing this all season long. So go check out some of that other stuff that I posted this week. I have a week one fantasy football playlist up on the channel. You can check all that stuff out on there. There's short content as well, and of course we are on other platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and we've got a community Discord server open to you all to join if you want to be a part of that. So go check all that stuff out, but I'm going to dive into the episode because this might get long. All right, guys, here you go. So as I did mention in the intro, I do want to be respectful of your time. I do want to try and move pretty quick because with 30 players here, spending a minute on each is going to put us at a half-hour long video for 2 episodes. So I'll try my best. I can get long-winded at times, but I think the best way to do this is going to be to start from the top. If you guys want to see me start from the bottom in future episodes, let me know in the comment section below. I can do that as well. But for the videos this week, I'll be starting with my elite running back one tier on top, and I think I'm just going to put them all up there at once. This group today, I believe, has 4 players taking part of it. I remember them here off the top of my head. We've got ourselves Jonathan Taylor this week taking on the Houston Texans, a matchup I believe is extremely favorable for the 2021 RB1, a player in a game script that should go very well. The Colts are the biggest favorites this week playing the Texans, and obviously that bodes well for JT. Austin Eckler taking on the Las Vegas Raiders, a player who is tied with Jonathan Taylor for the lead in total touchdowns at the running back position a season ago. It's not necessarily a matchup that you're oogling over right now, but it is definitely something that for such a dynamic player, I feel very strongly about. Christian McCaffrey making his return back to the football field this week against the Cleveland Browns. For me, if CMC's out there and he's healthy, he has the potential to be the best running back in fantasy any single week that he's on the field. It's all going to be about the touch count, how many opportunities he gets, which isn't really an issue, not something that we tend to worry about, but it is something that has been a struggle for him to stay healthy with the amount of opportunities that he's been getting over the past few seasons. So this week, though, I will take McCaffrey in this matchup, of course, as an elite tier running back one because we've got a fresh CMC against the Cleveland Browns. And then finally at the top here, the Kings of the Mountain for week one, I've got Derrick Henry taking on the New York Football Giants. They do have a decent front, I will say that, but my opinion with the Tennessee Titans and Derrick Henry this season is they absolutely need him. Yes, Derrick Henry is getting a little bit up there in age, but I think he still has 1 to 2 great football seasons left in him. I think that the amount of times he's going to have to touch the football here to continue to, help this offense get down the field is going to be astronomical. I don't think that they're going to be able to move the ball without having him touch the ball every single game 20 plus times. That is an expectation that I have. He's one of the best goal line backs in the league, a huge size and frame. Of course, we know all of this stuff. So let's head down to this strong running back one tier. These are going to be players that I think do finish top 12 or have very safe opportunities and chances to finish in this manner, but either they aren't nearly as elite of fantasy prospects as those first 4 names are, or there might be something that I think will make them struggle here for this week's game. So first up, we're going to start with Joe Mixon, finding him down here, placing him in that tier. Let's go Dalvin Cook in this strong running back tier as well. Alvin Kamara, this is actually going to be our largest tier for today's episode. There are a lot of players I feel very, very comfortable with this week, and our actual running back one list is going to go over 12 names, which in a standard 12-team league is something that doesn't happen, but we'll explain that. I feel very, very comfortable with this position group. This is, week one when everyone's healthy. and you're going to have a lot of the best out there on the field. And obviously, with some strong matchups, you've got good opportunities as well. DeAndre Swift makes this group for me. Aaron Jones. Let's also pencil in Najee Harris, a player who seems like he's ranked low this week. However, he is definitely someone that I think you want out there on your fantasy roster and consider one of the best backs in fantasy just from an overall volume perspective. Don't worry, once I get everyone up there, we will go back here and we will break things down. There's 2 names, yes, 2 more to put on this strong running back 1 tier. By the way, if you guys are looking for the actual rankings portion of this, I may mess up a few times. I do have numeric rankings on my sheet here, but you can simply just look left to right on the tiers list for today. And then finally, the last name I want to toss up here is Leonard Fournette of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll start with Joe Mixon here. This is a matchup where overall, the Pittsburgh defense doesn't really scare me too much as it relates to the Cincinnati Bengals, but I did see an interesting stat. In 6 of his last 8 contests against Pittsburgh, Joe Mixon has not found the end zone. Now, this is someone who sees a high volume of red zone opportunities. He plays in an elite offense. He'll get the touches. I think he'll be fine, but that is something worth noting. Dalvin Cook taking on the Packers at home. The Vikings are 2-point underdogs. I think they might actually sneakily upset Green Bay in that game. Dalvin Cook will get his numbers. He'll be fine. It seems like despite how good the Packers defense is, how much more talent they've continued to infuse into that defensive unit, Dalvin Cook always gives them struggles if they're in a stable place offensively, meaning is Kirk Cousins on the field essentially. He gives them fits. So I think Dalvin's going to be just fine. Again, another elite tier running back who opens up week 1. Well, he's not in our elite tier for this week because of that matchup being a little bit tougher, but he is one of those players that you generally think of as a top 5, top 6 fantasy running back. I think that if the matchup were a bit better this week, he falls into that elite tier. And for a guy who's really only question mark at times can be his health, he's never played more than 14 games in a season. Getting him fresh in week 1 is super, super exciting to have. Alvin Kamara taking on Atlanta this week is another really potential nice matchup. One of the easier ones, in my opinion, I think, for a running back who can get out in the flats and be a flanking weapon against defenses is a pass-catching option for Jameis Winston. We really saw him, Jameis, that is, take that growth as a quarterback and being able to check the football down and not only shot put things downfield. I think that bodes well for Kamara here in year 2 in New Orleans offense. I think they'll be very, very productive in this game, and I think Alvin Kamara will continue to be a focal point. He was running back 1 last season in overall running back target share. Not necessarily the same numbers he was getting with Drew Brees, but still a very impressive marker to be at, showing he is still heavily factored into that phase of the game. DeAndre Swift here, another player I'm very, very high on for this season. DeAndre Swift, in case you're wondering exactly where we're at, is my RB8 for this week against the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't love this matchup, I'll be completely honest. Philly has a tough defensive front, or what I expect to be a tough defensive front this season. But for me, where DeAndre Swift adds his value is his ability to score touchdowns, whether that be as a goal line asset or as someone who just finds his way into the end zone. And of course, the receiving involvement, I think his upside is sky high any given week because of what he can do as a pass catcher, because of what he can do out in space. And this matchup is no exception. Again, in terms of rushing efficiency for him this week, it may not be great, but what I do love is despite the fact that Philly's defensive line is very stout, the Lions have a very formidable front 5 as well that can move people out of the way. So you might kind of get the clash of the Goliaths up front there in that Philadelphia-Detroit matchup. I like Swift this week nonetheless. Aaron Jones, I am very bullish on here for week 1. I think that especially now, unfortunately, we're hearing possibilities that Allen Lazard may not play this week for the Green Bay Packers. That makes me more bullish on Aaron Jones. You've got a situation where Aaron Rodgers is going to have to go somewhere with the football. There's going to have to be a centerpiece and a basically core function of this offense in some facet. And right now, Aaron Jones is clearly the most talented, most proven player, the most trusted asset for that matter on Aaron Rodgers' side of the football. They are going to feed him the rock in the rushing and the receiving game. He'll get his numbers this week. I think A.J. Dillon's a very strong play as well. We'll get to him in a bit. And that leads us into Najee Harris. A quick update. This is our running back 10 position here. Najee against Cincinnati this week. I believe Cincinnati, for the majority of last season, was a top 5 unit against fantasy running backs. Look, the amount of times that I expect Najee Harris to touch the football is going to offset that. Again, I feel super, super strong with the running back group this week. It's, we're going back to everyone's healthy here. You have everyone available and at your disposal to use for week 1 action, basically. So all of the best are in lineups. You're not getting situations where teams, even good teams that have very productive offenses, have their second and third string guys in because the starter's gone down to injury or has COVID or something. So for me, Najee Harris at 10 feels very low. Just know if you're watching this, if you have Najee Harris rostered on your team, don't be concerned about him. I'm not worried whatsoever. He's going to catch the football. He's going to be rushing out there. And obviously, with Mitch Trubisky named the starter, they're going to have to be a pretty dang balanced team. It's not like they're going to drop back and just let it sling out there. This will be a run-first offensive approach, or at least as close as you get in today's NFL. Javonte Williams is my RB11 this week, taking on the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. This is a juicy running back for fantasy matchups last season. I continue to expect that to be the case this year. Javonte, for me, it's going to be all about the touches. How much is Melvin Gordon going to be able to be in the mix here, and how much will Denver's offensive staff just cut Javonte loose and let him be the guy for this organization? I think he's totally prepared, totally ready, totally capable of being a top 5 fantasy running back this season. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to see how things play out here with Denver's willingness to give him the rock and give it to him a number of times and give him rushing and receiving opportunities. I think this is a very favorable game script as well. Seattle is 6-point underdogs at home, which means the Broncos are 6-point favorites. So by that assumption and expectation here, Denver should be in control of things for the majority of this contest, and maybe by the end of it, they're running out the clock with a big lead in the fourth quarter. And then finally here in my strong running back 1 territory, I do have Leonard Fournette taking on the Dallas Cowboys. The reason I'm super high on Lenny this week, despite the fact that everyone's been calling him fat all offseason, everyone's been throwing shade and slander Leonard Fournette's direction, is I think he is a necessity for TB12 here in week 1. This is an offense with a very banged up offensive line. I've talked about this a lot throughout the week, as I love Chris Godwin. If he's able to suit up in this matchup, maybe by the time you're seeing this video, he's been ruled out or ruled in. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he's ruled in for that matchup. But basically, Dallas's strength is their ability to rush the passer. And right now, Tom Brady's weakness is, interior offensive line protection. He's going to have to get the ball out of his hands quickly before the pocket collapses. And to me, I think Leonard Fournette out of the backfield, in addition to Chris Godwin out of the slot, are 2 of your best options to quickly release the football from your hands and find a viable receiver. So on top of the fact that he's a capable goal line back, on top of the fact that he's able to be a lead rusher for this offense, I'm expecting personally a lot of strong receiving involvement here. And ultimately, I think that we'll reap the rewards of that and see a top 12 weekly finish for Fournette here in week 1. Our fringe running back 1 category. So after having a massive, strong running back 1 selection to choose from here, we have quite a minuscule fringe running back group with just a single name. That is correct. Just one name falls here, that name being James Conner, who is just barely behind Leonard Fournette for me, but I felt odd adding another name to that tier. Otherwise, I didn't really have any fringe running back ones for this week, so it was either James Conner hanging on by the skin of his teeth in the strong running back ones category, which I can agree with him being down here in the fringe running back one. That's ultimately why I put him here. Of course, this is my tiers list, but otherwise I would have left this list blank because I think that everyone else fits into the elite running back 2 category or lower. Basically, the reason that I ultimately didn't put Conner in the strong RB1 category is because of the matchup this week, that being Kansas City, and things could turn into a shootout very quickly here. There is not a guarantee that Arizona starts running the football and commits to that style of play. You could very well see the Cardinals just dishing balls downfield, trying to answer Kansas City for points, and just having things play out that way. I think they will try to run the ball. I think they'll try and establish the run early in order to keep things in hand here and not try and get in a track meet with Patrick Mahomes. Of course, his supporting cast doesn't have Tyreek Hill this season, but still probably not something they want to get themselves involved with and start trying to do here. So Conner, of course, is always a red zone and goal line weapon. He is also a very competent pass catcher in his own right. We saw that down the stretch of last season when he was really unlocked without Chase Edmonds. This week for me, though, I'm really excited to see what he does. We'll see how much Darrell Williams gets run in this offense. It'll all be a big situation to break down here. Now we're going to get into the elite running back 2s category, where I'm going to slap a Nick Chubb in here. I'm sorry, there's some Nick Chubb truthers I pissed off the other day in my, players you need to trade away video, but I'm standing pat on that. Nick Chubb for me, if you're satisfied with having yourself a fringe running back 1 every single week of the year, and yes, he doesn't fall in the fringe running back 1 category for me this week because I do think that these other players just have more upside than him, that's cool. If you killed the draft in every other aspect of things and have provided such elite upside at your wide receiver, quarterback, and tight end positions that you don't really need the best of the best top-tier production from your running back room, that's fine by me. But, in my personal lineups, if Nick Chubb is my running back one, I am not satisfied with that, and I just think you can only get so far with him on your roster. He did finish as the RB10 in running back points per game last season, but I've talked about this in the other episode. If you want to go see my case for why I'm out on Nick Chubb this year, go check it out. I do have him as an elite RB2 here. We got a little sidetracked there. We'll toss Saquon Barkley in this tier as well. And then also Elijah Mitchell. I also have I got to flip the page of my notes here. Oh, that's Antonio Gibson. Elijah Mitchell is right here. And then just to double check that I have not actually missed anyone for this category. I have not. We'll just get this taken care of now, though. We've got 3 players in the elite RB2 territory. Nick Chubb, we'll start with him first, taking on the Carolina Panthers on the opposite side of that CMC matchup. For me, like I said, I don't have Nick Chubb in the running back one conversation this week because of how firm I feel about those other players at this position, how much higher their upside is, their actual realisticness to catch passes out of the backfield this week. However, I do think he'll carry the rock a respectable amount of times. We know he's a great pure rusher, so he's going to be efficient with his touches. He's going to do nice things. But at the end of the day, I don't see his upside being nearly as great as these other players. And while floor value is nice, those players also have very nice floor values associated with them as well, especially in their respective matchups this week. So Nick Chubb down there at my RB14 position for this week. Barkley falls in at my number 15 running back spot, taking on the Tennessee Titans. Titans had a decent front last year. This past week, they actually lost Harold Landry to a torn ACL, their star pass rusher who made his first Pro Bowl a season ago. That's bad news. Obviously helps the Giants' offensive front. For me, as optimistic and as high on Saquon Barkley as I am, I'm going to be a little bit more pessimistic here in week 1. Over the course of the season, I'm praying he gets things right. I'm really hoping that this is the year that he breaks through. I hope he gets a massive touch count. I hope he totally carries the Giants to a win here over the Tennessee Titans, or however that ends up looking, as long as fantasy points score up in my lineup. I don't really care. I have no skin in the game for the Titans or Giants, but basically, I think he can do great things this season. However, he doesn't have that proven respectability in his floor value for me to put him in the RB1 category this week. So we're leaving him down here in the elite RB2s because obviously his ceiling is very, very high. And then Elijah Mitchell, I freaking love the matchup this week. He made the must starts episode for the week. A guy playing the 27th ranked unit against fantasy running backs here in the Chicago Bears, and they are 7.5-point favorites at Chicago. That is good news. Positive game scripts are positive for fantasy running backs. That means you're running out the clock late. You're getting lots of extra opportunities in a contest, and you're going to have the opportunity to be the focal point of the San Francisco offense in Trey Lance's first start as, the lead dog in that quarterback room. Well, the dog, really. You don't have 1-2 punches in the quarterback rooms in the NFL. So, for me, Mitchell has a very optimistic and favorable outlook this week. I am starting him in all formats. I don't like him for the course of the entire season, if you haven't caught a hold of that, if you watched my draft season analysis, but week 1 is a very, very good look for Mitchell here. Now let's move on to our strong RB2s category. This is where you're going to see some more names from the must-start episode this week, where you're going to get guys like Josh Jacobs, you're going to get guys like Antonio Gibson, 2 of those names we talked through this week, Travis Etienne, Ezekiel Elliott, A.J. Dillon. Where did he go? Here he is here. Is that it? We also have ourselves Miles Sanders in the strong running backs 2 category. So this is going to be our running backs 17 through 22 for the week. Josh Jacobs, I'll start with him first. The last time we saw him in a matchup with the LA Chargers, he rushed the ball 26 times for $132, averaging 5.1 yards per carry. I had a rushing touchdown to add on to things. My thought process is simple, and it goes as such. You don't want to have a shootout with Justin Herbert. You want to slow things down, minimize the game, make it a 3-quarter game instead of 4, if that makes sense. So limit the offensive possession time that Justin Herbert and the Chargers have, and you do that with your run game. Every time you rush the football, the clock continues. The clock does not stop. That's what you don't want to happen. you're going to get things, moving. You've got a very solid offense, very good pass catchers. Maintain that long time of possession and use your lead back, who I think may lose some carries over the course of the season. But here in week 1, I think he has some pretty solid job security and looks pretty decent for week 1. Antonio Gibson, my RB18 for this week, is taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Kind of interesting, It's a relatively even playing field here. We can talk about ETN as well because he is our next running back up. This is a matchup where I don't expect things to sway heavily one side or the other. I think both players will have solid matchups here this week. On paper, the Washington Commanders are a very tough out for ETN, but as I'll talk about him in a second, we'll get there. I should probably just split this up and go back to talking strictly Antonio Gibson. But for me, Ron Rivera came out and said it. They're going to let Antonio Gibson touch the rock. Not having Brian Robinson on the field is the reason I like him for this week. I talked about this in the must-start episode. You're basically just reintroducing the 2021 situation for the Commanders' backfield into 2022 now. It is just Gibson and McKissick in terms of fantasy-relevant options. Yes, McKissick's going to steal some passing work, but Gibson's going to get some run. He was top 4 in rushing attempts last year, top 4 in red zone touches. He'll get some good opportunities, hopefully some goal line looks, fall into the end zone here, and be a strong running back to play in 12-team formats for this week. ETN, going back to him here, of course, J-Rob is healthy. He is active for this contest, but I just love Travis Etienne, the playmaker, the ability to catch passes out in space. He's a guy who in his preseason debut ran 11 routes in the first half of that contest. You pace that out over the entirety of a football game. That's 22 routes run. That puts him in elite territory and would have made him last season one of 5 names to actually have that number. Those names included guys like Austin Eckler, Leonard Fournette. I'm, of course, blanking on the other guys now, but it was very elite territory. It was Najee Harris was another one of those names, and maybe C-Mac was the final. It was either Swift or C-Mac were the other 2 players on that list. So basically, the moral of the story is here, efficiency comes from the passing game, and Travis Etienne is going to be very, very involved in the passing game. Another interesting stat, Doug Peterson's lead running back in every single year that he's been the head coach or offensive coordinator for a NFL franchise, the lead running back has seen 4 or more opportunities, so that's just a fancy way of saying targets, has seen 4 or more of those looks every single game, or averaged. It hasn't been a flawless, foolproof system, but that has been the average. So you're telling me he gets 4 targets a week? I like that, and that's going to rack up to some success over the course of a season. He could see more than that too. So stay tuned for that. Ezekiel Elliott this week taking on Tampa Bay. Not my favorite matchup in the world. Tampa has been stingy against opposing running backs, but in last season in the opener, Zeke barely even got opportunities to run the ball. They just used him as a pass protector. But Tampa's D-line has worn down a little bit. It's not nearly the same defensive unit that we saw in the 2020 or even 2021 year. Maybe they prove me wrong. Maybe it's an even uglier matchup than I'm expecting. But the hope is that Zeke finds the end zone. I will say he is a touchdown-dependent play, but Dak and this offense need the run game. I don't think they have the luxury this season of being able to drop back and pass 50 times in this Sunday Night Football matchup. They just don't have the offensive playmakers to do that. So Zeke, for me, I'm expecting him to tote the rock a lot, especially early in the year here. That makes him a strong play for me. A.J. Dillon, another Packers running back, making the strong RB2's territory. My RB21 this week against Minnesota. Again, Aaron Rodgers is going in with a lot of uncertainty at the pass-catching positions. I think Dillon and Jones are both on the field for a heavy volume of Packers offensive plays here. I'll probably personally chart this myself if I can during the game, but I expect them both to be out there a high volume, a high percentage of times, and I think both of them are capable of getting goal line works. Both of them are going to get targets in the passing game. Both of them could find the end zone. I mean, everything could play out in a favorable manner legitimately for both of these players this week and over the course of this season. So I'm looking to find these guys on my rosters this year. Miles Sanders here is the final strong running back I have for this week. The Eagles have a severe offensive mismatch against the Detroit Lions defensive line. The Eagles were the number 1 rushing offense in football last year. Their offensive line is very good at getting a push up front. Miles Sanders should have his way. I don't think they're going to use him in a bell cow fashion, but what I do expect is him to be very, very efficient in this matchup and to pick up some nice yardage totals. He's not going to score 0 touchdowns again this season. He could potentially break that streak here. Week 1 opening things up against the Lions. So now we're finished up with Miles Sanders here. We're going to dive into the fringe running back 2s category, where we have, let's see, 4 names to talk through in this position group. First of which, Cam Akers is going up there. J.K. Dobbins is making an appearance as well. We are also going to see David Montgomery and Dameon Pierce in this grouping. So 4 guys to talk through. Basically, first and foremost, your Thursday night matchup. Hopefully you're watching this sometime Thursday morning when I'm posting it, Thursday afternoon, anytime before game time. It'll still be 99% relevant if you watch it Friday, Saturday, or even Sunday morning. However, obviously, Cam Akers does play in that Thursday night matchup. So if you're looking for some analysis here, let's have it. The Bills were a very favorable rushing defense last season. I believe they were 29th against fantasy running backs a season ago. That on paper looks really nice for Cam Akers. He's good to go. We know he's going to be the starter. However, the one thing that gives me some pullback and some scare is the fact that Sean McVay keeps yapping and blabbing about having 2 starting running backs. That's not something I'm interested in, Sean. I only want to see 1 starting running back. Let's see on opening night how things play out here. We'll look at snap count percentages. We'll look at, obviously, involvement in the receiving game, total rushing attempts, who's getting the goal line work. It's going to be maybe a 2-1 monster, but hopefully in a strong offensive attack, maybe things work out like an Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon situation where you've got 2 talented players and both of them get the job done. Darrell Henderson does miss the list for today's video. J.K. Dobbins has a matchup I love this week. However, we've stayed away from talking about him. He was going to make the must-start running backs list, but I didn't ultimately know if he would be out there on the field. And usually what I'll do if someone's questionable and I think that they're going to make the must-start list is if I feel comfortable enough in their backup to also make the same strong argument for them, I'll put them in the list. However, with the Ravens committee here, not knowing how much Kenyon Drake's going to touch the ball or if he's even going to play, who knows, or the Mike Davis situation, I didn't want any part of that. So if he plays, he's a fringe RB2 for me this week. He's got a juicy matchup against the Jets. They're 7.5 point favorites on BetUS. The link to join BetUS is in the description of today's video. Go check that stuff out and other links we've got down there to other stuff, other platforms. SFS is on here. But basically, start J.K. Dobbins as a fringe RB2 if he's out there on the field. If not, it's fine to leave him on the bench. He might be a risky play. You don't know how much is going to be total involvement for him, how much touches he's going to get, receiving involvement. All that stuff looks a little shaky right now, so we don't know the full extent of that situation. David Montgomery taking on the 49ers this week has a really bad opportunity for a negative game script, a really tough defensive front as well. Last season, these teams squared off, and the 49ers only allowed Khalil Herbert to average 3.1 rushing yards per attempt on 23 carries. So a large sample size netted a very, very poor rushing average. I just think if things turn south here, it's a severe talent mismatch. San Francisco, I think, will mop Chicago off the face of the earth. Sorry, Bears fans. I'm sure I just angered someone out there, but things don't look too good for Chicago's roster right now. It looks very talent depleted. Maybe they shock me. Maybe they've got 17 breakout starters that no one's been paying attention to all offseason, but I don't expect that to be the case. Dameon Pierce here, a guy who also made the must-sit list for me. I'm just going to give him a week. It's a stingy matchup against Indianapolis. I really like him over the course and the scope of this season. He's an immense draft value for most of us that drafted him in the spring or early summertime. His draft stock vaulted late in the season here. But for week 1, the Colts have a tough run as well. They have a really good defense at preventing big plays. I think he either needs an end zone trip or 2, and he could have a boom week. If he finds the end zone multiple times, he's going to have a great contest. If he catches the football more than I expected him to, he'll have a great week. If he breaks off a run and has a 30, 40-yard carry, he's probably also a relevant RB2. So he's in that fringe category for me. We've already went over the top of the 24 threshold for running back 2s, though. So realistically, someone on this list, if everything plays out the way I'm expecting, which, full disclosure, it won't, there will be incorrect picks on this list today, and, some of my takes will be wrong. That's fine. I'm just here to give me my opinion and my perspective, but I think Dameon Pierce could struggle in week 1, so again, I'm going to give him a week before I insert him into that lineup. And then in the RB3s here, we did make one mistake. Ken Walker wasn't supposed to be featured in today's video. Breece Hall, Rashad Penny, Chase Edmonds, and Damian Harris all fall into this category. For me, Breece Hall, I do think, is still the most fantasy relevant running back in this backfield. However, I hate the matchup, 7.5 point underdogs against Baltimore. Again, a situation where I feel like if you fall behind early, you're not going to be rushing the football. You're going to be passing. I expect Michael Carter to handle the majority of that work here early in the season before Brees truly earns and deserves that stuff. Rashad Penny, you talk about another situation, a 6-point underdog at home. He'll have to catch a bunch of footballs if he wants to be a flex lineup where they play in PPR formats, which he certainly could, but I'll stay away from him. He also could find the end zone. Chase Edmonds, I'm just really interested to see this Miami backfield play out 1 week here before I give him a starting lineup opportunity. Or if you get a situation where really the biggest thing for me about Chase Edmonds and the Miami offense is who's going to get the goal line work here. It probably will be Raheem Mostert to start the year. You cut Sony Michel, who was the guy I thought would be utilized in that territory. So really, before I trust Chase Edmonds, I'm going to let a week go by. You do have a stingy opponent here. Bill Belichick might do some interesting things on the defensive side of the ball, so staying clear of that one. And then on the other side of that, I do not like Damian Harris this week whatsoever. I think it's a really, really risky play with all the buzz that Ramondre Stevenson's been getting, the fact that Miami just seems to have the Pats number early in the season, and all of the struggles that we're hearing reported out of Pats camp. So I'm staying away, not interested in that situation. And those are our top 30 running backs, tiers, and rankings here for week 1 action. I think we made pretty good time here. I could be wrong. I'm about to find out. But if you enjoyed, make sure to smash that like button. Let me know your fantasy questions down in the comment section below. And check out sizzlefantasy.com, some of the other links in the description to help you out with your fantasy season this year. Sign up for Underdog Fantasy using code SFS. That'll get you access to myself as your personal fantasy advisor this year, and will help you do some really fun things this season. So thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for the wide receivers episode, and I'll see you there. Peace out.